Because of COVID, most of my family members were asked to leave the hospital, so I didn't have any visitors. But because my father had been a physician at the hospital that I was being treated in, he was allowed to visit during this, the course of my coma. My husband also, God bless him, fought kind of tooth and nail to be a visitor. So he was allowed in 2 hours a day in order to be with me. But when I woke up, it was my dad who was in the room. And this is where my story gets really confusing because you never know what a coma is going to be like until you're in one yourself. But probably closer to the end of my coma, when my brain activity was increasing and picking up, I had a dream. In this dream, I'd been in my 3rd trimester of pregnancy. My husband and I had traveled for a baby moon, and I lost the baby on that baby moon. So we had to fly back to the United States. And so when I woke up and my dad was in the room, because I had a trach in, I couldn't talk. I could only mouth words. So I mouthed to him, I had a miscarriage. I wanted him to know that I had lost the baby. And he, was trying his best to comfort me. I, now know he did not understand what I was trying to say because he patted my hand really reassuringly and said, I know. And that began this kind of, at this point, a comedy of errors that led to me not knowing that my son was alive for 5 days. One thing that I think this part of my story heightens and is a good learning opportunity for providers and nurses is because of COVID, I had transferred hands a lot of times. So I went from the mother-baby center to the cardiac ICU to the neuro ICU. And people were not allowed to transfer between units if they were working in one area of the hospital. Everything was pretty locked down. And so the people that were taking care of me, they weren't my labor and delivery nurses. And so no one really sat down with me to walk me through what had happened once I had become lucid and was responding in a meaningful way. And that was probably an opportunity where I think people were relying on someone else to tell that story, and no one was the point person. But that is true of my family too. I think a lot of precautions were being taken to ensure I didn't get too upset, that nothing was re-traumatizing, let's keep things light and easy. But it led to just this 5 days of confusion, not knowing what had happened to me, not knowing where I was. I thought I was in Florida, and not knowing, what had happened to my baby. And so 5 days later, I understood that my son at home, Henry, was the baby that I had been pregnant with. And at that point in time, I really wanted to get out of the hospital because he wasn't allowed in, and I wanted to meet my son. Being a mother was something that I had dreamed about my entire life. And in some ways, there was this new grief that I was a mother. I didn't know I was a mother for the first 20 days of him existing, 22 days of him existing. And now other people were taking care of this baby. And, I had romanticized what having a newborn is like. I think all kind of mothers going into it for the first time do. And now those days were just, gone. I had missed the moment I had become a mother. And on top of that, I was missing all of the little moments. His first bath, his first everything, right? And so I was discharged from the ICU after about a week, once I had gotten off the vent, and transferred to Courage County Rehabilitation Center. I was booked in for a 28-day stay, but they told me my husband's visiting privileges were having to end. And so at that point, I set my mind to, no, I'm getting out of here. So I walked out of the rehab facility after 6 days. So very fortunate to have made a full cognitive and physical recovery after the event. But it's not without its pain, right? And its grief. In 2021, I was approached and was asked if I would want to create a documentary on our story. And I decided yes. I thought it would be a really excellent way to process some of the grief I had been experiencing, to get to hear from my providers. As the filming kind of ensued and my healing was occurring on camera in real time, we kind of had a separate mission as well. So yes, as a vehicle to process my grief, but then also to raise awareness for AFE and then showcase what trauma looks like after an experience like my own, to showcase kind of the lived experience of traumatic births from a patient's perspective, and serve as kind of a call to action around how we could maybe do better by our moms. I think that we need to, as a society, institute more after support in the form of in-home follow-ups, whether it's with a nurse, whether it's with a doula or a therapy program or anything, but we got to check in on our moms because they're going through, at least in a scenario like mine, misery to bring this life into the world. And then we're discharging them and just hoping it all works out. And I think we know that a significant portion of perinatal death happens in the postpartum period, and is occasionally self-inflicted. And I think it's due to this lack of systemic support for moms. And so I think we need it for all moms, and especially for moms who have endured trauma during childbirth. The documentary is called 24 Days Without You. It was released at the Twin Cities Film Fest in October of 2024. And it is currently available for medical conferences, hospitals or clinics who want to arrange screenings for their staff, schools, educators, so it will be featured in a nursing school program this fall, and then also for just corporate viewings.